I could not think of a better place to discuss this topic than here at John Jay. For decades, you have trained many of New York's leaders in law enforcement and public service, including many who are working right now around the clock to keep our city safe and secure during this anniversary weekend. America is and remains a beacon of freedom, a guarantor of global security, a true opportunity society, a place to excel, a country of possibility where ideas hatched in a college dorm room can grow into a multi-billion-dollar business. The source of our greatness is more durable than many people seem to realize. Yes, our military is by far the strongest, and our economy is by far the largest. Our workers are the most productive. Our universities, like this one, are the gold standard. Our values are solid. But we have real challenges, and we have to step up and deal with them. But there should be no doubt that America has the capacity to grow our economy, solve our problems, and renew our global leadership. Ultimately, this doesn't rest on the shoulders of a president or a secretary of state alone. It rests on the shoulders of the American people. We have to be ready to recapture that spirit of service and solidarity, and to find the common ground that unites us as Americans.
And the big picture here is almost surrealistic. Everybody knows we are at war, and while politicians have used that language carelessly in the past, you use it accurately now. Not since the Civil War have you lost so many of your people in a struggle on your own streets in your own land. We're losing lives every day. That's not an exaggeration. We are being beset by a new form of drugs called crack that was not thought of 3 years ago, that has no response, that is frightening in its implications and not even thoroughly understood. It can addict you in one tribe. We're going broke building prisons. You're at war and you're losing. And I've had them for the last 7 years tell me, we're tough, we want to kill people with the death penalty. And I have said to them, I don't accept it, I don't agree with it. I think you're phonies on this issue, some of you. I don't think it's going to make the police safer. And anyway, while you're talking about the death penalty, you had better do a whole lot of other things. You had better educate people, you had better provide treatment, you had better provide police and DAs, etc. Now that's been the argument for 7 years. And what's happened? It's worse than ever right now. The police are victimized where they never have been before. The whole system is absolutely overcome.
Because many people, unlike my parents, did not flee the South. They stood and they fought. And they said, this is my country too. And our children will walk into the libraries in Robinsonville, Mississippi. Many of them did not live to see that happen. But they dreamed it would. They believed it would. And now for me to walk by street corners and to hear this, it's as if you're putting the chains on your own minds. So I grew up in a home, not a home where we had a lot of books because we weren't going out to buy them, but I certainly grew up in a home where the library was considered a sacred place. And when people ask me for my role models in my life, and I know that it's a subliminal class question in that, because my background is public record, and they will say, well, how did you become a writer? And who were your role models? And I mean, coming out of a home like that, how did you do what you do? And I will tell them about my role models. I will tell them about the woman who worked in the cotton fields and who refused to let people tell her she was a beast and who had somehow the ability and the strength to dream And I will tell them about being drugged to the library before I even attain the age of literacy, and about the countless other women there in Harlem with us who will never make the front page of a newspaper. But if they had not existed, we would not have the Carol Moseley Bronx. We just simply wouldn't. It is a celebration of self, a celebration of the ordinary, and the triumph of the human spirit.
I can't think of a political problem that we have in this country today that does not have a racial component to it. That makes every problem we have that much more difficult to resolve because we haven't gotten rid of bias. We've repressed it, we've suppressed it, and perhaps even more importantly, in a way, a huge amount of the bias that we have today is totally unconscious on the part of whites who don't think of themselves as being biased, but still demonstrate in their actions many of the results of a culture that has gone on for that period of time.
Judges are great conveners. If nothing else, they are great conveners. And so I have decided to use my credential as former chief judge, forever advocate for juvenile justice and justice generally, to move forward with this idea of pursuing the school to prison pipeline. You cannot be the chief judge of the state of New York, as was my good fortune for more than 15 years, without heart and soul being an optimist, believing that you can make this a better world, believing that you can bring about change that is vital, important,
use your art for something bigger than you. Be of service, especially to the weak, the vulnerable, the orphan, the widow, the fatherless, the motherless, the marginal. Keep a distance from John Jay College, because John Jay College is about examining who you are, examining your assumptions and presuppositions, examining whatever prejudice and prejudgment you have, because you want to learn how to die. You want the worst inside of you to die so that you learn how to live and become stronger. You can engage in forms of growth and development and maturation. Learning how to die is at the center of what the Greeks call paideia, P-A-I-D-E-I-A. I'm talking about high quality education, not cheap schooling. And John Jay is not about cheap schooling. It's about trying to shake you to the core of your being so you try to examine yourself so that you answer the question, the most frightening and terrifying question you ever ask yourself: what kind of human being do you really want to be? That's the question. We're not talking about your market price. We're not talking about what neighborhood you're from. We're not talking about what your mama looks like and what your dad is doing. We're talking about you. What kind of person do you want to be? What does it really mean to be a featherless, two-legged, linguistically conscious creature born between urine and feces? Hello. Unless you're opted for cesarean section. Your mama did. But beyond all of our color, our class, our gender, our sexual orientation, our civilization and culture, what kind of human being do you want to be? Yes, I want to be a funk master. I want to keep it funky. I don't believe in deodorized discourses, sanitized discourses, sterilized discourses that acting like you're so clever and you're so smart and you're not really dealing with the kind of human being you ought to be, because one day your body will be the culinary delight of terrestrial worms. That's funky too.
Malcolm went beyond the normal parameters or the average limitation in his quest for the human rights of members of the African diaspora. He was the first one that I ever heard use that term, because everybody was fighting in the South for civil rights, and God knows we need civil rights. But if every 10, 20 years we have to get a new civil rights bill for human beings, something then obviously is wrong with that particular thing. Individuals who's given their life to fighting for civil rights. You know, people have made an institution. I was one of the ones jailed. I went to jail 50 times. Where are we? We cannot even get a civil rights bill through. One of my white colleagues says, I can't deal with it, to know that some of my people have been responsible to help these people live at the level of animals. And I said to him, if you can't handle it, you can just imagine me. On one level as a human being, on the second level as being the widow of Malcolm X. Regardless of what people say, he was correct. A lot of people were frightened then, frightened now. But I say to you that we have the responsibility to change the face of this earth. If we do not, our children are going to reap the whirlwinds.
Newspapers were supposed to be locally owned. They were supposed to have a public trust. There was a lot that was implied in newspapers that obviously wasn't true. But actually, my point is actually a little more nuanced than that, I hope. And it's this. If you do the story because you think it's a story, and because you think it has merit and ought to be told, that's great. And if you do the story, if in December or January, whenever you look back on the work you did for a year, you say to yourself, hey, I did some good work this year, maybe I'll put this up for a prize. That's great. You know, if you're thinking about the prize you're going to put it up for in February when you're planning the project, then you're an asshole and you're part of the problem. So it's really simple. I mean, if we're all in journalism, let's speak the truth, you know?
absolutely understand that trials very often have two opposite roles. And these two roles are being developed simultaneously within the courtroom. And what are they? One is the use of the trial system by the rulers up above to use the trial system as a force to continue oppression and discrimination against the overwhelming majority of the people, and being used to keep the power structure in power and in its place. And then simultaneously, there is the struggle to utilize the trial system as opposing this, as a force for social change and social justice, and use that trial and court system as a means of what? Yes, not only social change, but social protection. And you all remember what has happened. What happened there? We had to go in there. And everybody thought we were crazy for even trying, that we didn't have a chance in hell against the aristocracy in this country. And yet, what did we have to do? We had to take the position that the written Constitution is the supreme law of the land, designed to what? To protect the rights of millions and millions of people. And the Bill of Rights is essential if a democracy is to survive. And we had to persuade what? Conservatives! Sitting up high in the court, the conservatives, we had to convince them. Because it would destroy the role of the Supreme Court itself. And then we learned a lesson that every single one of you sitting in this room has got to learn. You fight hard enough, you bring these issues out to the front, and what happens? You can win!
There are so many pieces to this remarkable puzzle, but at the heart of the solution to the problem of crime in this country are the people of this country. And there are so many, both as individuals and as individuals associated with institutions such as the one we meet in today, that are doing so much to prove that working together we can end the culture of violence in this country if we are comprehensive in our efforts, if we rely on solid information, and if we use good old-fashioned common sense.
But there was a repression immediately. And by the early 1970s, across the spectrum, political spectrum, there was a very articulate attempt to beat it back, to drive people back to passivity and obedience, to overcome what liberal elites called the crisis of democracy, too much democracy. People are supposed to be passive and obedient. They were concerned about what they called, this is liberal elites, what they called the institutions responsible for the indoctrination of the young, which weren't doing their job. Look at these kids thinking about all kinds of things they're not supposed to think about. So that had to be beaten back, and there's a whole array of measures that were taken from, raising tuition so people get out of school with a huge debt crisis to all sorts of others, cutting political firings and so on to try to get the institutions back to their job of indoctrination of the young. There were law and order campaigns, the completely fraudulent drug war. That is basically a way to sort of impose obedience and get rid of the superfluous population, mostly African American, who were kind of losing the opportunities for work with the collapse of the productive economy and the financialization of the economy and so forth.
I believe that policing in the future will be what is becoming known as community-oriented policing. And community-oriented policing is a way of thinking about policing. It is not a program for policing. It is a way of thinking about policing. And that way of thinking about policing is to work with the community, identify the problems in that community, and then engage in something that we call community policing, which is programs to solve the problem.
The court has often acknowledged the importance of clear, easily understood rules when police conduct requiring on-the-spot judgment is at stake. And though we try to provide such rules through our decisions, we do not always succeed. Empirical research of the kind John Jay is able to provide can assist judges by informing us of decisions that are producing more fog than light. What this college studies and instructs, I know this audience appreciates, is important not only to police practices in the United States, but to law enforcement practices in countries throughout the world. Those who wield authority over others will resist abuse of their power if they recall, to borrow Dr. Seuss's gentle maxim, a person's a person, no matter how small. or I might add, erring in his or her ways.
There's absolutely no question that our integration movement and those things that we fought for so courageously, and so many paid such an extreme price to achieve, has fallen upon hard times. America has not lived up to its promise. White America has stepped away from its responsibility to its fellow citizens of color. And certainly those who sit in the seats of power, corporate captains, heads of government agencies and committees, those who sit in the highest chairs of the administration of government, have all along the line missed their mark severely. Yes, it is interesting to watch us define this booming period of our economy, to know that America is moving ahead and has had in its coffers more money than any nation has ever had in the history of our existence, and that so many seem to be doing so well. Yet in fact, when we remove ourselves from the facade and we take a serious look at what is happening to not only the citizens of this country, but the citizenry of the world, we will have to say that there has been a severe imbalance. The top 6% that's running off with the world's wealth is not quite what we had in mind. The bottom 94% that still struggles and still languishes in conflict, trying to find its place in human development, sit there deeply confused and with a great sense of frustration in not being able to easily touch solution.
I come before you as a woman with an issue, not a grievance. The issue is the issue of democratic fair play and fundamental fairness. I have always wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. This lifelong ambition is based on a deep-seated commitment to democratic fair play, to playing by the rules as long as the rules are fair. When the rules seem unfair, I have worked to change them, not subvert them. Unfortunately, sometimes the majority is a fixed group that seems to rule by dominating or excluding the minority. We can all participate in governmental decision-making if we simply learn to take turns. And if we all participate, then the outcome, whatever it is, will seem more legitimate. My point is this: 51% of the people should not always get 100% of the power, especially if the 51% use that power to exclude the minority. In that case, we do not have majority rule, we have instead majority tyranny. The first lesson is that those who stand for principles do not lose. As Attorney General Janet Reno advised me while my nomination was still pending, if you stand on principles, you cannot lose. Because even if you lose, you still have your principles. And I can assure you, I still have my principles.
I think what Belize is suggesting is that there may be some place that we can arrive at with enough struggle where it's possible to keep the past alive and the future alive at the same time. That justice and love can coexist in some space called forgiveness, and where it's conceivable that we both retain the memory while perhaps, I think it probably is a Buddhist notion of where we allow some kind of compassion. And there is and it's not just Buddhism. Christianity has it, Judaism has it, Islam has it. All faiths struggle with this because what we're trying to achieve is a sort of a God's eye view of humanity, where you can see, Bull Connor and the marchers in Selma as being, manifestations of some imbalance in the people who are in the right, who are doing God's work of moving the human life forward, and the people who are doing the devil's work and holding us back are connected, and then the trick is to not let that become complacency or skepticism about the possibility of change.
We train here the people that will make sure that we have a fair, compassionate, safe society. And throughout New York City, in every part of city government as well as in the private sector, you will find John Jay graduates doing a great job. One of the sad things is that because of that, there were a number of the victims of the terrorism on 9/11 who were John Jay graduates, and our hearts have to go out to them. But what we owe to them is to build for the future. If we don't have a good legal system, if we don't make sure that people get treated fairly and are protected, then we have nothing. And if we don't have a justice system that really ensures that we are protected and we are protected in a fair way, both of those things have to go together. Then you don't have a tax base, then you don't have a society, and then you can't get down to worrying about education.
I think everybody at that time, like in the 60s, you had to say to yourself, what would you do if X happened? Would you go this way or that way? And would you stand up and speak out, or would you just go along with the crowd? I certainly suffered a great deal of what should I say, neglect for creating art that was about freedom. Because that was not acceptable in the 60s. You weren't supposed to do that. You're supposed to make some art that's not about anything. I'm serious. We're not supposed to make political art in the 60s. Everybody politicized everything, but not art. But I did. And I was ostracized and couldn't show my work and this and that. So that's a kind of death, because a lot of people stop when they can't participate. They just stop doing it.
This poet writes about this and the need to be quiet. The poet is Pablo Neruda. And now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his broken hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is all about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now, I'll count up to 12, and you keep quiet, and I will go. Pablo Neruda. Another great poet who once wrote one of my other favorite poems, Let America Be America Again, Langston Hughes. He wrote this at another critical time during the Depression, in the World Depression in the 30s. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. Let America be the dream the dreamers dream. Let it be that great strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark, and who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the gold, of grab the land, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the men, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker, sold to the machine. I am the Negro servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean. hungry yet today despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream. In that old world, still a serf of kings who dreamt the dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet is mighty daring seeing in every brick and stone, in every furlough turn that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home. For I am the one who left dark island shores and Poland's plains and England's grassy lea, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who says the free? Not me, surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we dreamed, for all the songs we sung, for all the hopes we held, for all the flags we hung. The millions who have nothing for our pay except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has yet and yet must be. The land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, the Indian, Negro, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly names you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. For those who live like leeches on the people's lives, we must bring back our land again. America. Oh yes, I say it plain. America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Thank you.